Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, we're going to evaluate Matt Strahm's 2023 season. An interesting one, and one that saw a lot of career marks for the lefty. He was a big part of this team, at least early on in the season. And also, we've got some Aaron Nola rumors to address based on his free agency and a division rival who seems to be interested in his services. We'll cover it all on today's episode of Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is indeed Locked On Phillies. I'm Connor Thomas, your host. This is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for checking us out. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that helps us out here at Locked On Phillies that I ask you to do all the time. I appreciate everyone who's done that already. And if you enjoy the show, go ahead, subscribe. It costs you absolutely no money. Takes 2 seconds of your time, and it gets you new notifications when episodes are posted so you don't miss any great content here on Locked On Phillies. Appreciate it. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's J-A-S-E medical.com. So go ahead and check them out. Now, let's jump into our evaluation of the day. I'm surprised that this is the guy that was picked by the YouTube comments. But yes, the guy that I saw the most asked for is Matt Strahm. This is the first pitcher we will have evaluated for the 2023 season player reviews. A very interesting one. And a guy that kind of went to the backs of our minds as the season progressed. As you got deeper into the season, September, October, you weren't really thinking about Matt Strahm as much. But if you think back to the start of the season with the injury to Ranger Suarez, and the need for Christopher Sanchez to throw a lot more. And a lot of questions about Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. Andrew Painter goes down, so he's not available. Matt Strahm became a big part of this rotation. And he was actually really, really helpful in a lot of ways early on in the season. When this team needed a guy to fill up innings, they took Matt Strahm, who they brought in as reliever, signed before this past season, as a guy who could help them as a lefty out of the pen. And they put him on the mound as a starter. Now, he'd been a starter before in his career, but the last time that he had made significant starts in a season was 2019 with the San Diego Padres. So it'd been a while. It'd been 4 years since he had really taken on the role of a starter in earnest, and he really took care of business. Now, I've got his numbers in total this year because I think it's also proper to evaluate the bullpen. He's split time between the two. Basically, first half of the year, he was starting. Second half of the year, you saw him move into a bullpen role. But the numbers look really, really good for Matt Strahm. The number one most impressive thing to me is the innings pitched. So his previous career high in innings pitched, 114 and 2/3 innings in 2019 in San Diego. That year I was talking about the last time he was a starter. Now, he didn't equal that because he didn't make as many starts, but he totaled his second most innings in his career this year, 87 and 2/3 innings. Prior to 2019, or besides 2019, I should say, he only barely got over 60 innings. And that was only one time. That was 2018. He threw for 61 1/3 innings. This was a big jump in innings for him, especially considering he threw 44 in 2022, only 6 in 2021, and 20 in a shortened season in 2020. So this was a big jump in usage for Matt Strahm, and he really, really held up. I mean, he looked outstanding at points. Cleared 100 strikeouts in that usage. So 108 strikeouts in 87 2/3 innings. Good strikeout stuff for Matt Strahm. Looking at the ERA for him, a 3.29 over all appearances. And when you look at that compared to some of his other numbers, I mean, a huge bounce back year for Strahm. 3.83 last year with Boston. 8.1, now a small sample size, of course, only 6 2/3 innings. In 2021 in San Diego, he wasn't good. And then 2020, 2.61, probably his best. That is his best career. No, he had a 2.05 back in 2018. But like, he only had a couple years lower than the 3.29 he posted this year. The 2.61 in 2020, 2.05 in 2018, and a 1.23 back in 2016, his rookie year. I mean, all of those years too, you notice something? Significantly less innings pitched than what he put up this year. You could argue that Matt Strahm had a career year in 2023 by some of these numbers. Another thing that I thought was really impressive, his strikeout to walk ratio, 5.14. He barely walked anybody this year. He was very, very accurate. 21 walks on the season and 87 and 2/3 innings pitched. You'll take that. A walk every 4 innings, basically. Whew. Yeah, that's pretty good for Matt Strahm. And to be able to do that while switching between roles as a starter and a reliever is even more impressive. Just like the whip, 1.015. If you're allowing a base runner an inning, you're normally in a pretty good spot to not get hurt. And his walks per nine, I already told you he's looking good, but 2.2 walks per nine, 11.1 strikeouts per nine. That's the second best mark in his career, trailing only his 2016 rookie season, and that was a 22 innings pitched season. So a lot of the numbers aren't career highs, but he split his career highs between multiple seasons before. It's not like he had like a career year and all of his numbers were better in one season. This was arguably Matt Strahm's most complete year. He was a huge part of this team, and he deserves a lot of respect as an unsung hero of the 2023 Philadelphia Phillies. He was also big in the postseason at points. He was a really good lefty out of the pen to balance out Jose Alvarado. We know Jose Alvarado has nasty stuff, but he doesn't have the best control at points, and he's a power pitcher. Matt Strahm was not a power pitcher. He was a guy that worked with accuracy and movement. Not that he can't throw hard. I mean, he's got solid velocity on his pitches, but he was much more controlled, and it was a good balance to the power of Jose Alvarado coming out of the pen. So I like a lot what you saw from Matt Strahm. I think he had a really, really strong year. He proved that he's a good teammate as well, doing whatever was asked of him by the manager, by the team in general, like whoever was making those decisions overall, and I believe it was a combination of Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thompson and some other guys in there, Caleb Cotham, pitching coach, like they were moving him around left and right into different roles on this team, and he handled everything in stride. It was a great year by him. It really, really was. And I don't know how much you can expect that to be replicated in 2024, just considering like his track record. Like he's not an old guy, but he's not young either. He's currently sitting at 32 years of age, which for a reliever is kind of right about the back end of the prime. But relievers have a longer prime than position players. You see guys throwing into their mid-30s, no problem. Late 30s sometimes if guys have specific longevity. And I really like what you got out of Matt Strahm this year. I can't really think of too many complaints when it comes to Matt Strahm's performance for the Philadelphia Phillies. You need guys like Matt Strahm, versatile pitchers, lefties, guys willing to take on multiple roles, and guys that are just gamers. That's what I think about when I think of Matt Strahm. Put him in any situation. A true gamer, a guy who's going to show up regardless of where he's placed, that is invaluable. You'll have guys, and it's no knock on guys like this, but for example, let's talk about, so here's a great thing. Let's talk about Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola is a guy that is a starter. He's good in a starter role. You would never consider moving him. Part of it is the ability, but it's just like you would never flip him around. And on the flip side, Jose Alvarado, he's going to throw high leverage innings late for the bullpen. That is his role. That is what he's comfortable with. That is where he fits in. Craig Kimbrell's another great example. Great in the ninth inning. Anything outside of that, he's not as zoned in. Matt Strahm did it all this year. He did everything that was asked of him. And that versatility, now he's not as talented as Jose Alvarado. He's not as talented as Aaron Nola. And he doesn't have the resume of a Craig Kimbrell. I know how much Phillies fans dislike Craig Kimbrell right now, but the resume does speak for itself. But what Matt Strahm does have is versatility that great teams need. When something pops up, he was kind of the utility pitcher of this team, if that makes sense. Utility position player is a guy who could play multiple positions and pop in at any given time. Matt Strahm was kind of that for the pitching staff, and he was a super valuable part. So I want to give props to Matt Strahm. I don't even think I realized before I checked out those numbers just how good he had been in the 2023 season. So now that I am more familiar with the actual stats that he posted when everything was said and done, I'm even more impressed with what Matt Strahm gave the Phillies in 2023. And I'm excited that they signed him to a 2-year deal this past offseason. So you have him again in 2024. He will be back with the Philadelphia Phillies, not a free agent. He is under contract, and then he will hit free agency after the 2024 season. But that begs a question. A guy so versatile, a guy that did a lot for this team, where do you see him being used in 2024 on the next Philadelphia Phillies roster that we see? It's a great question, and it's one I'm going to dive into coming up next. What will Matt Strahm's role be in 2024? Well, I'll tell you what I think as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. First, though, I want to tell you about our title sponsor, Jase Medical. You and I, you listen to this podcast all the time. We spend a lot of time talking to each other, and we get fired up together at wins. We get upset about losses and who starts and who sits, all that stuff, the tough decisions. Well, I'm thankful for that connection that we've shared here on Locked On Phillies, and I hope that you can trust me. And I want to make this chat a little bit more personal when it comes to this sponsor because of it. I know that you can get, wow, a 1-year supply of ED medications if you need to. You can get a bunch of different medications, big supplies, not just small doses if you need to. And you realize what that means? You can just go on extended trips. You can go through any issues with the supply chain. Like, I don't know, let's say natural disasters, like who knows, an earthquake happens, a tornado hits something and messes up something with the supply chain. We saw this with the pandemic. Like, supply chains are very fragile sometimes when things happen and change the course of things being delivered, like medication that you need. Well, Jace Medical has figured this out, okay? If you go online right now, jasemedical.com, you can receive your 12-month supply on daily medication that you need. Remember, you can use promo code Locked On at checkout for a discount as well. But the upside of this, I mean, you get the opportunity to get your medication now so you can save it for later. So you don't have to worry about, will my medication be delivered on time? Will something restrict me from getting the daily medication that I need? No, you can get 12 months of it through Jase Medical and be all set to go for the year to come. And it's highly recommended by other customers. People really love the fact that they can have security in the medication they need. So if you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily med, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember, use promo code Locked On for $20 off your purchase. All right, so Matt Strahm, 2024. What does his role on the team look like? Well, part of this is going to depend on what the Philadelphia Phillies do in the starting pitching market. Aaron Nola is a free agent. So right now, if the season started today, your rotation would be Zach Wheeler, Ranger Suarez, Taijuan Walker, I'm assuming Christopher Sanchez, and then who? Michael Lorenzen, also a free agent. I haven't heard any whispers about the Phillies wanting to bring him back. They may, but I haven't heard that as a priority. The priority is a top-end starting pitcher. And Lorenzen, while he did throw a no-hitter, he didn't really reach that level since being acquired at the trade deadline. So you need another top-level starter. Matt Strahm's not going to be the fifth arm in that rotation. He's just not. He's not high enough level of starting pitching to put him in that rotation for a team with World Series aspirations. So you got to see who the Philadelphia Phillies sign. They may go out and they might get 2 starting pitchers. It might be a top-level guy, and it might be another guy as a depth piece. Or there are some young players in the minors, Mick Abel, Griff McGarry, who are continuing to work their way towards the majors, and maybe they'll debut in 2024. If they have a good spring, if they get invited to camp, if they end up in a spot where you see them on the major league roster early on in the season, well, they could be an arm in the rotation. And you understand that I'm saying a signing and then somebody else. That's because I think a 6-man rotation would be beneficial for the Philadelphia Phillies at points throughout the season, because clearly Rob Thompson, Dave Dombrowski, and this organization, they value the health of their pitchers hugely. Like, they want to make sure that everyone's available come postseason. And this year, they were. And that was a huge asset to them over teams like the Atlanta Braves or the Miami Marlins, who had issues with guys not being available for postseason series. The Phillies don't want to find themselves in that spot. And a 6-man rotation lessens the amount of stress on the arms of these pitchers, especially considering if they're a guy that's been here for multiple years, let's say Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, they pitch deep into the postseason as well. So these are guys that you need to try and make it as easy on them as possible. A 6-man rotation is a possibility. And let's say they just sign Aaron Nola back, and your rotation is Wheeler, Nola, Walker, Suarez, Sanchez, like how you saw this year. Could Matt Strahm be used as a 6-man in that rotation? I could see him doing that, but I'd much more expect his role to move into the bullpen in entirety for the 2024 season. Now, where does he fit in the bullpen as currently constructed? There's an opening at closer. Matt Strahm doesn't have closer stuff. I don't see that as a realistic spot for him. Jose Alvarado's your top left-handed arm, deservedly so. He's unbelievably nasty. And then you got some other good righties. you hope bounce back. Sir Anthony Dominguez, you hope he bounces back. Jeff Hoffman, you hope he has a year like he had this past year. There are some guys that are already entrenched in roles in the Phillies bullpen, but Matt Strahm's going to have valuable innings. I see him as your second best left-handed reliever, assuming Christopher Sanchez will be part of the starting rotation. And I think that's a really important spot to have someone as proven as Matt Strahm in. He'll be the guy that you see that gets the 5th or 6th inning on short start days, maybe the 7th or 8th inning if there's a lefty-lefty matchup and you want to save Alvarado for maybe a high leverage situation coming up later, or he's not available based on how he's thrown. And I could also see Strahm as a piggyback guy. If you bring up a player like Mick Abel or Griff McGarry out of the minors and they make their first couple starts at the major league level, I could see them being paired with Matt Strahm as an opportunity to get them 3 or 4 innings of work, and then Strahm gives you 2 or 3, and then you move on to a normal bullpen day. So he will be versatile still, but I don't see him making starts in the 2024 season unless there's significant injury issues. I think he's more valuable as your second best left-handed reliever. And that's a valuable spot on a playoff team. And the Phillies will be a playoff team again in 2024. Trust me. So where do I see his role? Top 2 lefty relievers in the bullpen. If I had to rank the guys currently available, I'd probably put Hoffman, Alvarado. I'm trying to think who else I would put above him. He might be your 3rd best reliever right now, especially considering Sir Anthony Dominguez didn't look great. Dominguez has better stuff, but Strahm was much more reliable in 2023. It wasn't even a close contest to who you believed in more. So, yeah, he's a really good bullpen arm for this team, a valuable part of this team. And he's just one of those guys where it's like consistent, nothing flashy, gets the job done day in and day out. And at the end of the year, you look back on his numbers like we just did in the first segment and say, wow, this guy really ended up putting together a strong season for you. So the hope is that he can replicate that. And if he throws less innings, maybe even be a more valuable player in that his performance will be higher with less stress on his arm. The question is durability, considering he just hit his 2nd highest innings pitched mark of his career in 2023. Will he be able to bounce back in 2024? Will he take a drop off? Will his body feel that as he works through a shorter offseason because the Phillies played in the NLCS? Those are all questions that we'll figure out as spring training begins. But bottom line is Strahm's going to be a top arm in the bullpen this year for you in 2024, and he was in 2023, both in a starter and a reliever role. So bottom line on Matt Strahm, right? Outstanding. Really liked his 2023 season. Not enough good things to say about Matt Strahm. And it's great to get production from guys you don't necessarily expect to get production from. So that's my evaluation of Matt Strahm's 2023 season and why I'm excited to see him in 2024. Now, coming up as we wrap up, there have been some interesting rumors swirling around out there, as there always are with Major League Baseball free agency. And Aaron Nola has been tied to a team. Now, this could be just conjecture. This could be conversation. This could be actual contact between the teams. All that's been mentioned right now is that it's a thought that he might consider this team. But when I tell you who it is, it changes our mindset entirely, or at least mine, on how to handle Aaron Nola's free agency. We'll discuss that as we wrap up Locked On Phillies. Yes, Aaron Nola, the free agent, one of the aces of the Philadelphia Phillies this past year. I know he was inconsistent, but in the postseason, you can't argue with the results. He has been tied to, at least in conversation and rumors, the Atlanta Braves. Now, there's a lot that goes into this. The Braves are a team that have a lot of room as far as payroll is concerned because they keep making these unbelievable deals with top-level players. As soon as they become good, the Braves sign them to like a 100-year contract for $1 million a year, and they just cake money. It's really, really good work by Alex Anthopoulos, their GM, and it opens up the opportunity for them to be big spenders if they want to be. Now, I had some pushback from people when I brought this up on the radio saying, well, the Braves don't spend money like that. They don't throw money at free agents. No, the Braves haven't spent money like that. And that's because they've been lucky enough to have advantageous trades, your fault, Oakland Athletics, and also do a great job of developing players internally, signing those players early to team-friendly deals, and rolling with guys that end up producing. It's been a really good stretch for the Atlanta Braves. Now, it doesn't help them in the postseason because it seems the past 2 years they've been short on pitching when they face the Philadelphia Phillies. But now this Phillies guy in Aaron Nola that has killed you the past 2 postseasons if you're the Atlanta Braves becomes available. And he's from Louisiana. And the pitching coach that was with the Phillies is down there in Atlanta that Aaron Nola is familiar with. And there's all these ties to like, will they spend money and go out and try and get Aaron Nola? And will he want to go to another contender if it doesn't work out with the Philadelphia Phillies? And here's my question, right? I don't have any doubts that the Atlanta Braves are interested in Aaron Nola. Why wouldn't they be? If you saw a guy that was a big part of knocking you out of the postseason and cost you 205 regular season wins the past 2 seasons, wouldn't you want to have him on your side instead of letting him go back to the Philadelphia Phillies? Absolutely you would. Are the Braves willing to spend as much as it'll take to actually land Aaron Nola? That's a deeper conversation that I don't really have the answer to right now. That's up to them and how they want to attack this offseason and what else they're focusing on and needing. But he's definitely going to be a focus for them. And as a Phillies fan, when I see that, I say, I look at their rotation and you pair Aaron Nola with Spencer Strider and some of those other guys that they have down there and that awesome lineup. And I would be definitely more worried about the Braves with Aaron Nola than I am about the Braves without Aaron Nola. There might be some people who say, let him have Aaron Nola. They can take him. He's inconsistent in the regular season. He's going to kill him from within. And then I urge you to think about how he looked in the postseason this year. It would be much harder to beat the Braves with an Aaron Nola playoff performance coming against the Philadelphia Phillies than what they had this past year having to throw Bryce Elder in a game. They've been deficient on pitching in the postseason. Aaron Nola is a workhorse who is not injured often. They're durable as they come as far as starting pitchers with that type of pedigree. He would be a good fit there. And that makes me want the Philadelphia Phillies to either bid up the price to where the Braves are not going to pay for him or sign him back. It really does. If it's Aaron Nola to the Braves or Phillies overpay for Aaron Nola, I think I'd rather have the Phillies overpay for Aaron Nola. That feels like it would be too much of a boost for a team that's already ahead of you in the division standings. And sometimes I feel like you have to play defense in free agency and not just play offense. What I mean by that is you might have to go sign a player so he doesn't end up on a divisional rival just so you don't avoid that. And Aaron Nola still would help the Philadelphia Phillies. It's not like you're wasting a roster spot to bring in a guy because the Braves want him. No, you saw what he can do in the postseason for the Philadelphia Phillies. It would just kill me to see him in a Braves uniform, and it could kill the Phillies season if he's as successful in the postseason next year as he was this year. So how does that make you feel? When you hear Aaron Nola potentially to the Braves, would you consider signing him more than you would have if they hadn't been involved? I definitely think about it a lot harder if I'm the Philadelphia Phillies. But just one man's opinion. You can let me know what you think in the comments. Also, let me know in the comments how you want to do the next player evaluation. Now, I'm going to do a special episode for tomorrow's episode. So this will be for Wednesday's episode. We're going to be able to do the next player evaluation. Tell me in the comments who you want me to evaluate next. Tomorrow's episode, what it's going to be, I'm going to address some trade rumors. Juan Soto, Mike Trout, and we're going to jump into that a little bit deeper because there have been some requests for that as well. But I want to know, let me know in the comments of this episode who you want me to evaluate next. Whatever name I see the most of, or if there's a tie, whatever one I saw first is going to be the player that we evaluate next. And just a reminder of who we've evaluated so far. Did Matt Strahm today. Harper's been evaluated. Stott's been evaluated. Rojas has been evaluated. Bohm's been evaluated. Schwarber, Castellanos, and I believe that's it. And Brandon Marsh. I knew I missed one. So those are the guys that we have evaluated so far. Let me know who besides them you would like me to evaluate next. And remember, tomorrow's episode is going to be a breakdown of the rumors on Mike Trout trade potential and Juan Soto trade potential. We'll discuss that on the next episode, but that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for checking us out. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff. Locked On Phillies is part of the Locked On podcast, your team every day. And I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.